Well, you had Burrow and the Bengals on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Just chatting with him and getting under the hood. Did you get a sense of the it factor that everybody keeps talking about?
100%. 100%. I watched him, studied him a little bit coming out of college, liked him. But my assessment of him would be what anyone's assessment is. Hey, the guy makes good throws. He handles pressure pretty well. When you watch film, it's not hard to see who can play and who can't play. But I really think the differentiator between quarterbacks, there's guys who get, when you take a guy in the first round, it's a flip of a coin as to whether or not that guy is going to go on and become the guy that you hope that he would when you drafted him. And there's a lot of factors that go into that beyond the player's control, coaching and, of course, good players and all of that. But what the player does control, or what he at least possesses, I think is the intangibles that makes a difference. I really do. Can you find that when you just sit in a room with a guy? Do you know when you sit in a room with Joe Burrow before he's ever taken an NFL snap that he has that it factor? I don't know. I've asked personnel guys that. Mm-hmm. When I talk to these guys, you can usually tell they've already got a resume. So I'm not the one who's drafting them. But with Burrow, I know when we talked with him, and you see it now in his interviews, he's got an edge that this guy's he's a competitor, he's a killer as far as how he competes, and I like everything about him, and it's obvious that he galvanizes that team, and they love playing for him, and those qualities I think are paramount if you're going to be a championship quarterback.
And what do you think's going through Stafford's head, Troy Aikman, right now? Thursday before the big game, he's finally.
How good is that?
The questions about, is it Detroit or is it him, or is it a combination of both? And now he was 0-3 in his playoffs for his entire career. He's 3-0 just this playoffs alone. What do you think's going through his temples right now?
I know we talked to him week 3, I believe it was. They were getting ready to host the Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, hey, how's it been for you with the Rams? And he said, and he loved being with the Lions. Sure. He wanted to turn that program around. He loved his time there, I know. He wished they'd had more success.
Well, but he put in his time there.
He absolutely did.
And
he said, this was week 3 of this year. He said, this is what I always envisioned the NFL being. And it was such a great line. And you think of all the great players who have been relegated to, basically being on these teams that aren't that good. And then for him to come to the Rams, and now he's in the Super Bowl, I can only imagine what he's thinking now. If he thought that this is what I always imagined the NFL being week 3, how's he feeling now? But enormous pressure on him, as we know, and on this team to get to where they are. And yet, here they are. So I've known Matthew a long time. He grew up where I now live in Dallas, and won a state title there with the high school. But for him to meet all expectations, that just doesn't happen very often. So I'm proud of him. I'm proud of the Rams and what they've been able to do, and maybe they can finish it off.
He's played mistake-free football pretty much. I know that.
Well, and the other part of that, Rich, is I will say that there were those things. Hey, he hadn't won a playoff game like you alluded to a minute ago. He hasn't beaten his record against teams with 500 records, all of that stuff. And it was out there. And if you retire that way, that's the narrative. That's what they're saying about you. And yet now he's doing what I was able to do. He's got good players around him, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have good players around you and you have good coaching, you tend to beat a lot of those 500 teams, and you tend to win a lot of playoff games, and he's been able to do that, and I've been thrilled to see it happen.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.